So this week we had a first reading of the Bill C-32, and inside it mentioned the long-awaited tax-free first home saving account. And inside it mentioned the official launch date of April 1st, 2023. So for this video, what I want to do is quickly go over everything we should know about this account, and later I'll talk about some strategies or rule of thumb you want to keep in mind when this account launches and you're deciding between this or TFSA or RRSP. Now, before we start, like always, make sure you help us hit the like button because YouTube algorithm is super stingy with how they promote the videos. So if you don't help us hit a like, it's not going to be promoted to more Canadians who should be paying attention to this new account. And also make sure you join our free private Facebook group. Inside you're going to get more content and you can ask different questions about your personal finance. Alright, without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So first, let's go through with the basics of this account, everything you need to know about this account. Now, if you already know how it works, you just want to go to the strategy part, you can also check the timestamp and jump forward that way. But for this account, it's better to imagine it as a hybrid between an RRSP and TFSA, and it does give some very unique feature or strength that kind of makes you may want to prioritize them over your RRSP in some cases. Now keep in mind, everything I shared today is from the CRA's own website. I provided the link to the same article that I'm going through and summarizing. The strategy later on is based on my own interpretation and understanding of this account and how it works. And because it is brand new, it's very fresh. If you don't agree with something or you think I made a mistake of something, let me know in the comment down below. So first of all, let's talk about who can open this account. Now, to open this account, you need to fulfill a couple requirements. Number one, a resident of Canada, obviously. Number two, you need to be 18 plus. And most importantly, you need to be a first-time home buyer. What that means is you cannot own a principal residence that you live inside for the current calendar year that whenever you open it, plus 4 extra years before that. Now, this is actually very similar to people that can use RRSP home buyer plan. So what that means is if you have owned a rental property for the last 4 years, but you never lived inside and you don't live in any other properties that you own as a principal residence, you can still open this first home saving account. But on top of that, the first home saving account has additional deadlines on when it will stop being one. Either when you reach the 15th year since you first opened this account, or when that person turns 71 that year. So next, let's talk about what you can invest in. This part is very simple. Basically, anything you can do inside TFSA or RRSP, you can do them, and anything you cannot do in those two accounts, you cannot do them in this new account as well. So third point to keep in mind is how much we can contribute in this account, because there is a limit. Every year, we can put up to $8,000 into this account for a total lifetime limit of $40,000 per person. Now, your first 8,000 contribution room will be available in 2023 when this program launches. I encourage everyone who fits this requirement that can open one should open one right away. You don't have to put money inside yet, but it doesn't hurt to open one right away. The reason why is because contribution room will carry forward at a maximum of $8,000 in total at a time. So what that means is if year one you put in 5,000 only, for year two you would be able to put in the 8,000 that you got in year two plus the 3,000 that you didn't put in the room that carry forward. Now, however, if let's say the first 2 years you only put 2,000, so 2,000, 2,000, on the third year you would only be able to do the 8,000 that you got for year three plus the maximum of 8,000 contribution room carry forward for a total of 16,000 for year three. You would not be able to do 8,000 for year three plus 12,000 for the contribution room because you didn't use the 6,000 for 2 years in a row. You cannot just carry forward everything. It's only up to 8,000 max, so keep that in mind. Now, for all the contribution you make inside this new account, you can actually write off your tax very much just like how RRSP works. However, unlike RRSP, you cannot buy it in January or February of 1 year and then use it to offset your tax for last year. Whichever year of tax you want to write off, if you want to write off that year, you have to at least buy from that year. Now, however, if you bought it, but you don't need to use the tax write-off, you can carry forward. You just cannot carry backwards. And finally, CRA website like TFSA and RRSP will give you information that allows you or helps you track all the info and all the contributions. but it is up to you to really make sure that you're not going over the limit. Moving on, let's talk about how to withdraw. And basically, there are two types of withdrawal you can make in this program. So the first one is the qualified withdrawal. This is exactly like how you withdraw from your RRSP home buyer plan, except there's no more 35K limit inside. Now, if you draw from this plan in any year and you say this is a qualified withdrawal, is for your first home, you do have to be entered or provide and purchase or build agreement for your qualified home by October of next year. And just like RRSP, you can also draw it within 30 days after completing on your first home. Now, if you qualify for everything that I just mentioned, then you can actually draw the whole thing, your contribution plus all the gains inside, tax-free for your home. And also, you don't have to refill this account like the RRSP where you have to pay it back over the next 15 years slowly. You can just draw it out and that's it. There's no more consequences afterwards. So because of the fact that this does not have the 35K limit, plus you don't have to pay it back, it actually makes it much better than the RRSP home buyer plan in most cases. And I'm going to discuss later on in the strategy part, when is it not better than the RRSP home buyer plan. Now, on the other side, if you're not making a qualified withdrawal, then you're making a non-qualified withdrawal. And if you make a non-qualified withdrawal, this is just like drawing from an RRSP regularly. Everything that you draw will be counted as income, and also your bank is going to apply some withholding tax on top, so keep that in mind. One side note here is that if you make a non-qualified withdrawal, any income you incur from this withdrawal is not going to add it to the calculation of your child benefit or other things like GST tax credit. So don't worry about it lowering your benefit from the other side. It's not going to be part of the calculation. Now, fifth point, let's talk about transferring in or out of your FHSA. You can transfer this first home saving account into another first home saving account, just like how you would transfer TFSA or RSP to another institution. You can do the same thing here. You can also have multiple accounts as long as you're not over the total limit or the yearly contribution limit. Now, other than that, you can also roll it over to your own RRSP or RIF on a tax-free basis. One very important and interesting part about this is if you transfer into your RRSP or RIF, it does not take up your RRSP room. It will also not be limited by your RRSP room. You can just do a direct transfer inside and your RRSP contribution limit will be unchanged. However, if you do transfer this into an RRSP, your FHSA contribution limit will not come back. It will just be gone forever. So keep that in mind. Now, in the strategy session, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but the fact that it does not take up your RRSP room or not limited by your RRSP contribution limit is actually very powerful when it comes to tax planning. And very lastly, you can also do it the other way around where you transfer your RRSP into your FHSA, but the restriction is a little bit different here. Now, if you do it the other way around, you are limited by your total FHSA room that you have so far, and it will use up your lifetime limit. Plus, you do not get additional tax deduction in your FHSA because it's a transfer, it's not a new contribution into this account. And also, you lose your RRSP room and you don't get it back. Now, this sounds very bad, but later on we'll talk about in some cases, it could still actually make sense for you to do it this way. But we'll talk about that later on. Now, number 6, this is something people wonder all the time. Well, with the existing RRSP home buyer plan program, can I use both at the same time? Unfortunately, you cannot. You can only pick one at a time for the qualifying home that you are purchasing. Now, second last thing to understand is spousal contribution or attribution rule. How does it apply to this new account? Now, for this new saving account, you cannot do a spousal contribution into it. In RRSP, you can actually do something called spousal RRSP where the higher income spouse contributes to the lower income spouse RRSP, so it's owned by the lower income spouse, but all the write-off belongs to the higher income person. In this case, you cannot do so. Whoever owns the account write off their own tax. There's no spousal contribution. However, they allow you to use each other's money to put inside whoever's account. Doing so will not trigger any attribution rule, just like TFSA or RRSP. And finally, let's talk about what is the penalty for over-contributing. So it is very much like TFSA. It's going to be 1% a month on the excess amount until you draw it back out or until new contribution comes in and it puts you under the limit again. And obviously, any contribution into this new account over the limit will not grant you any tax deduction. All right, so that's everything we need to know about the basis of this account, the mechanism of it. Next, let's talk about some strategy that we may want to think about, or some rule of thumbs. So first of all, let's compare this to an RRSP. What is the advantage? What is the disadvantage here? Because you can either use the home buyer plan or you can use this FHSA withdrawal. Now, the advantage here is actually plenty. Number one, you can draw everything plus your gain. There's no limit on how much you can take out. So depending on when you take it back out, it can potentially be a lot higher than the 35K limit imposed under the RRSP home buyer plan. Second advantage is you do not need to pay it back over the next 15 years, which will be very helpful for first-time home buyer because likely your budget is going to be a lot tighter after getting your first home. So this is very helpful. And number three, like I said before, you can roll over to RRSP or RRIF without taking up any room, deduction limit, and do it on a tax-free basis. This is actually quite powerful and can provide you additional write-off or tax shelter growth if you have already maxed out your TFSA or RRSP. Now, the only disadvantage with this account I can think of is that it takes 5 years to work up to that 40K contribution limit, which may not be very useful if you are planning to buy in the next 1 or 2 years. So with all those in mind, upon first glance, here are some, I would say, rule of thumb that I think makes sense that you may want to keep in mind on if you're deciding how to prioritize which account you want to contribute first going into 2023. So first of all, right away, if you are someone that can open an account right now because you fit all the requirement, regardless if you're gonna buy a home or not going into the future, you should probably open an account right away in 2023 just to start that 8,000 contribution limit and then have it carry over until next year because you can do 8K max for a total of 16K by 2024 or after, should you change your mind and you want to contribute inside. Now, the second rule is that if you're single right now and you're considering buying a home in the future, you should probably fill this account to the maximum first over your RRSP. Third rule is that if you are in a relationship thinking about buying a home and you are the higher income spouse, you should also prioritize this new account over your RRSP. And finally, if you are the lower income spouse in this relationship, then there could possibly be an argument that you want to prioritize spousal RRSP under your name first before you do this new saving account. And if you're wondering why, next let's go through some scenarios I can think of where you may want to prioritize one over the other, or you may want to think about utilizing this because it really gives you additional tax saving or tax planning capacity. Now, first scenario is very straightforward. If you are someone thinking about buying a home in the next 4 to 5 years, if you're single or the higher income spouse, this is why absolutely you should do FHSA first, because you are going to work up to that 32K or 40K of contribution limit, which is going to be equal to your RRSP 35K or even more, plus the fact that you are able to draw all the gains outside already. So if we assume an 8% return per year since day one, by the time your 5th year and you have been maxing out your account every year, you are going to have 62K sitting in this account, which you can take out, which is almost double what you can take out from your RRSP, and you don't have to pay it back over the next 15 years. Now, on the other hand, if you are someone thinking about buying your home in a much shorter timeline, like maybe 1 or 2 years, you should still probably do your FHSA first and then roll over to your RRSP and take it out under your home buyer plan if you need more down payment by then. So for example, let's say you're buying within 2 years after starting this FHSA. Now, if you contribute to the max, you would have had 16,000 inside already, plus whatever gain. So let's say it's 20K in total by year 2. If you need more down payment, you can actually look at how much money you have in your RRSP account. And what you can do is roll this over into your RRSP and then take up to 35K from your RRSP in total right now to go buy your home. Now, in here, you would need to pay it back over the next 15 years because it is under HBP, but it does allow you to go beyond that 20K limit because that's all you have inside your FHSA in this example. And also doing it this way first, you get more RRSP room for yourself to use going into the future for your own retirement or writing off other taxes. Now, third scenario I want to talk about is the lower income spouse and why you may or may not want to use FHSA here. So here, I'm going to suggest both of you open a FHSA year 1 right away anyway. Now, for the higher income spouse, what you can do is you can prioritize contributing into your own FHSA first, max that out, get that maximum write-off for yourself. And if you still have money afterwards, this is where you want to think about, is it going to be an FHSA for your lower income spouse, or maybe you're using a spousal RRSP. Now, if the lower income spouse have like very low income tax bracket or even maybe not working at all, then maybe a spousal RRSP here makes more sense because you would be writing off your higher tax bracket while it's owned by your spouse. And every year what they can do is roll the spousal RRSP over to the FHSA to allow it to keep growing until it is ready to buy a home. Doing it this way, you can also bypass the 35K limit imposed by the RRSP home buyer plan, but you still enjoy that high write-off on your bracket. But this one is a lot more nuanced because it does take into account what is the trajectory of the lower income spouse income looking like, and also what is the current bracket. So for this part, you may want to ask your advisors, planner, or even CPA. Now finally, I also want to talk about parents using this for their kids or just starting one for their kids. So it's very common for parents, as soon as the kid is, turns 18, they have TFSA room, they start a TFSA for the kid right away. Now in this case, I would actually suggest you can also do the same thing, start an account for them, and maybe start maxing out into the FHSA for them. And the reason why is because this account can actually stay as a FHSA for 15 years since you first open it. So let's say your kid is 18 and you do this right away. Assuming this account stays around for a long, long time, in 15 years, they're going to be 33, which is around the age they want to start thinking about buying their first home. So by then, if you want to help them with their down payment, well, this would be a gift, and it's going to actually work out pretty nice because they get to withdraw everything for their first home, plus they got up to $40,000 worth of tax deduction that they could have used within their lifetime to write off their income, give them extra tax saving that way, which is a TFSA cannot do. Or later on, if they really don't want to buy a home, then they can also roll over the FHSA into the RRSP and continue growing it in a tax deferred basis, which is very, very powerful. And lastly, this may or may not be true depending on the return, but they can theoretically have 15 years worth of uninterrupted compounding because it's tax-free basis. And then worst case is you withdraw the whole thing out as unqualified withdrawal because the account is closing by then. Yes, the whole thing will be taxed at 100% as income, but depending on the return you have received for the last 15 years, I would imagine even after, let's say, pay half of it back to the government as tax, you may still walk away with a very sizable return in your account. All right, so this is everything I want to share. It's probably a little bit longer video than I usually would make. If you like everything I'm talking about today, make sure you hit the like button once. If you don't like them, hit the dislike button twice. Next one I want to hear from you is, how do you plan to use this FHSA account? And if there's anything that I missed that you think I need to keep in mind or think about for my clients, let me know in the comment down below. If you like these kind of videos, I do upload them 8:30 EST every Tuesday. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and click the bell button so you get all the notifications in the future. All right, this is Jacky. I hope you found this interesting. I'll see you next week. Bye.